Hello, let's do the New York Times Medium Sudoku for May 16th, 2024. There's a link in the description if you'd like to try the puzzle yourself in the same Sudoku pad software that I do. And I'm going to get started right now. So for the mediums, I don't make too many assumptions about your Sudoku level experience, so that's why these videos are significantly longer than, say, my hard solves. It's not because they're harder. So we are going to start with some terminology to make sure we're on the same page. I call these cells. There's 81 cells in the grid, and each cell will end up with a digit 1 to 9 placed in it. We also have 9 horizontal cells are called a row, and 9 vertical cells are called a column, and then a 3 by 3 area of cells that are denoted with this bold outline region are a box. And so there's 9 rows, 9 columns, and 9 boxes in the grid. The grid is the whole thing. Now in every row, column, and box, we are placing the digits 1 to 9 exactly once each, with no repetition and with no omission. So meaning we're going to have 1 to 9, and there's 9 cells, right? So we're going to have 1 of each, exactly 1 of each. Okay. In addition to that, I'm going to be talking about bands and stacks. A band is just a convenient name for a row of 3 boxes, and a stack is a column of 3 boxes. There are 3 bands and 3 stacks in the grid. All right, so now let's get started. We're going to start by looking at bands, and what this initial pass on scanning, which sometimes solves the puzzle and sometimes doesn't, and it's okay if it doesn't. We got lots more to look at if not. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be able to just focus mostly, almost entirely, on just the band. We're going to extract as much information about the band as we can, and then we're going to move on to the next band, and then the next band. Then we're going to do the stacks. And by not having to worry about looking at the puzzle as a whole, it allows us to find what I call the low-hanging fruit. It allows us to find some deductions that don't require a lot of interpretation of the grid as a whole. So we're allowed to, we can focus just on the band. So let's do that now with this first band. Now let's think about a band for a second. What are we expecting out of a band? Well, I'd say we're expecting to find 3 of each digit. Now, you can prove that in several ways. One way is it is made up of 3 rows, and each row has 1 of each digit. And so the band in total will have 3 of each digit. It's also made up of 3 boxes, and each box will have 1 of each digit. And so because there's 3 boxes, there will be 3 of each digit. We're going to use both of those properties here. So we're going to look for where we have 2 out of the 3 digits known. If we have all 3 known, we don't care that much. If we have just 1 known, also don't care that much. But if we have 2 of them, that's where it's interesting. So in this case, we have 2 ones in this band known. The third one, we don't quite know where it is, but we can really narrow it down. We're always going to be narrowing it down to at most 3 cells, and it's going to be these 3 here. Why these 3? Well, there's a few ways to prove it. One is the 3 digits we find aren't going to be random. There's going to be 1 per row and 1 per box. And of course, that's not 6, that's 3. So there's going to be overlap there, right? This is the one for row 1, and it's the one for box 2. This is the one for row 3, and it's the one for box 3. So we need the one that's for row 2, and we need the one that's for box 1. And so that overlap between those is just these 3 cells. Another way to show that, which is the way I'm going to be using this sort of scanning, it's a really nice way of scanning it, is we have these 2 ones that occupy these 2 boxes. So in the box they don't occupy, this one says these 3 cells can't be a 1, and this one says these 3 can't be a 1, but the box still needs a 1, and so it's got to be in one of these 3 cells. Excuse me. Now what we do is of course, this cell here is filled with a 4 already, so that can't be the 1. And we're going to be, this is where we glance out of the band just for a moment. We're going to look for any 1s down here. Pretty easy to just look for 1s down here. You can look really quickly. And you can see we do have this over here, and that would have also taken the 1 out of here, but we already knew it wasn't there. So 1 is down to 2 places in this box. Now you may have this instinct or desire to just guess and go, well, one of these is going to be 1, so let's just pick this and see if it works. But we don't guess in Sudoku. Well, I mean, you can, but I don't recommend it. Because when you guess, there's a chance you're wrong. There's only one solution to the Sudoku. And so there's a 50% chance that you've just placed it in the wrong spot, and it is possible for it to be in the wrong spot, and another digit was supposed to be there. And so you may not notice that until you're very far into the solve, and you won't even be able to really trace that back to, oh, it's because I placed that one in the wrong spot. You're going to have to start over. So if you start guessing, you're going to have a bad time. You're not going to enjoy it. And it's not going to seem very fun because if you just guess right, you basically solved it by guessing, which also isn't that fun. So these can be logically solved with 100% logical steps. When we place a digit, we are 100% confident that the logic says that that digit is the only digit that should go in that cell. And we're going to do that to all of the open cells until the puzzle is solved. But that said, we do want to remember that we've reduced the 1 to just these 2 cells. So this is where notation comes in. So Sudoku pad is very nice. If you're using the New York Times built-in software, you can't do this. You only have one form of notation. But Sudoku pad is nice, and that has 2 forms of notation that you can use simultaneously. You've got the corner notation and the center notation. Now, we're going to have those mean very specific things in every puzzle we solve. Every puzzle we solve, we're going to use those markings to mean the same thing across all the puzzles. So we're going to use the corner mark mode and put the ones there, because the corner mark mode is going to mean that within that box, this is the list of cells that that digit can go in. So in this case, in box 1 here, in this box, the list of cells that 1 can go in is these 2 cells, and then we put corner marks there. Now we're only going to corner mark if we're down to 2 places in the box, or sometimes 3. I say sometimes 3 because it's only going to be if they're all in the same row or column. So like if this 4 weren't here, we could do all 3 here. But if we reduce the 1 to say these 3 cells for some reason, we would not corner mark that, because that's going to get confusing and it's going to just be clutter that's not super useful. So down to 2 anywhere or within the box, or down to 3 if they're all in the same row column. So these ones are going to notify us of certain things. Most importantly, if we ever eliminate one of these cells as, oh, this one actually can't be 1 anymore, for example, and we removed that, then we'd be able to place the 1 here because it's the only place left in the box that can be 1, which our corner mark is telling us. The entire list of cells in this box that can be 1 is just this, so we can place it. But we can't do that yet because we haven't proven anything. Okay, so center corner, all of our markings are going to be about remembering things that we've already discovered. Cool. So now we want to make sure that we haven't missed. You can just try to glance and go, okay, I see these are the same. I see these are the same. It's very easy to miss digits that way. So the way I approach this is I compare each box against each other box. We want to compare box 1 to box 2, box 1 to box 3, and box 2 to box 3, and look for duplicates. And I recommend starting with the box with the fewest givens. So in this case, we just have the 1, right? We already took care of the 1, but we would look for 1s in boxes 1 and 2, and we go, okay, we have this 1, and we'd find that there. And then that's 2 out of the 3 comparisons we had to do. Now we just compare these 2 boxes against each other, pick the box with the fewest, the 4 and the 6. Now we just look for 4 and 6 in here, and we don't see any. So that's all of the duplicate digits. Now, before moving on, there are 2 more things I want you to look for. I want you to look to see if you filled up a box row. This is a box row, right? Through the 3 cells within a box that are all in a row, that's called a box row. Have we filled any of those? These have 2 out of 3, these have 2 out of 3. So no, we haven't filled any. None of these box rows are completely filled, so we skip that. And then we also look to see if any row or box has been reduced to 4 or fewer open cells. So for example, this box has 5 open cells, and none of these have 4 or fewer. So that's all we're going to get with just these little markings here. And that's okay. Sometimes you get nothing, sometimes you get a bunch, and it just depends on the band and how the puzzle is. So now we're going to move on to the next band, and we're going to repeat that. So we look for the 7, 6 in one of these 2. We don't see any 6s, but there is a 7 repeated here. So these 7s look into this box like this, saying no 7s here. This 8 occupies one of the spots. We look up here, we look down here. There are no 7s that are helpful. This one's not helpful right now. And so we can corner mark 7s up here. Now that we've done the 6 and 7, we can look for 4 or 7 in this box. 7 we already took care of, right? But we look for 4, we don't see it. Okay, any filled box rows? Nope. Any rows or boxes down to 4 or fewer? Nope. So move on to the next one. Going to start with this 9, 7. No 7s over here, but there is a 9. So these 9s look in, these 9s look in. The 1 and the 5 aren't 9. So actually there's only 1 cell left for 9. Now I could corner mark a 9 there, but what's the point? I'm just going to put the 9 there. This is our first place digit, and we are confident that this has to be 9 because the box needs a 9, needs to allocate one of its cells to be 9, and none of these cells could be 9, and so this is the only cell that can be 9, so it must be. All right. So that was the 9. Now we look for 6 and 5. We don't see any 6s, but we do see the 5. These 5s look in. This is not 5. Now we look up here for 5s. We see this 5 here. That says this cell's not 5 because we can't repeat in the column. And so there's only one cell in this box that can be 5, so it must be. So we place that 5. Alrighty. So that was the 5. And so that's all of the repeated digits in this band. You can see we actually got some nice digits out of that. Now we look for filled box rows. We have filled this box row with 1, 5, 9. So what we want to do is we want to look at the 2 rows in the 2 boxes that this isn't, right? So that's going to be these 12 cells here. See the pattern there, right? It's the 2 rows and the 2 boxes that this isn't. We just scan those 2 for any digits that aren't already placed in the box. So 5s and 9s already placed, but the 7, it sticks out because we need a 7 in the box still. So look what this 7 does to this box. It removes 7 from these 3 cells, but also these 3 are filled with non-7s. So that means 7's reduced to these 3. So it's very similar to as if 7 had a buddy. And actually 7 does have a buddy in this box, which we'll be able to locate in here, but I'll get there. So additionally, this 7 does remove 7 from here. So we can corner mark 7 in one of these 2 cells. Now, this does something very special. It causes what's called pointing. This is one of the first advanced technique I'll go over. And it's not that advanced, but it is going to be required for a medium. It's still considered a basic technique in the Sudoku world. But none of the techniques I'm going to go over for any New York Times hard puzzle in the Sudoku world would be considered beyond basic. But they are still very, very, very important. They're called the basics because if you don't know those, you're not going to be able to solve any puzzle except the very easiest. Anyway, this is pointing. It's very easy to understand. So in this box, we have reduced 7 to just these 2 cells. Now, I want to ask a question. Do these cells care which one ends up 7? We know one of them will be 7. Do these cells care which one ends up 7? And the answer is no, they don't care. If this is 7 or this is 7, the result is the same for the rest of the row. These will not be 7. If I try to put a 7, say right here, what happens is these now can't be 7. This 7 says these aren't 7, and these aren't 7. Now I can't put 7 in the box. And I knew that would happen, right? Because the 7's going to be down here. I can't put a 7 somewhere that removes both of those corner marks. So none of these are 7. It's called pointing because you can imagine drawing a line between these cells. And that line can have an arrowhead on it, and then that would continue and point at the rest of the row and say, no more 7s. The 7's over here. The 7 is here, so it's not here. Well, if the 7's not here, and this 7 says not here, and this 7 says not here, guess what? The 7 ends up here. And we found the buddy that would have caused these. See how that works? Maybe. All right. So that took care of the 7. That was it for the filled box rows. Did we reduce any rows or boxes to 4 or fewer? Yes, we did. This row is down to 4 or fewer. So this is where I'm going to introduce center marks probably. Yeah, I will introduce center marks here. But the first thing we want to do is think about what digits can go in these 4 cells. And the answer is just the 4 that aren't yet placed in the row. So it's going to be the 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, and 8. So what we want to do is we want to look at each of these cells and think about 2, 3, 4, 8 and see if there's any 2, 3, 4, 8s in the grid looking at those. So we're going to be looking up here in its column, and we're going to be looking in the box. The row doesn't matter. We got that out of the row. So we just care about these for this cell here, which I'll make green. I'll make purple the cells that we're scanning. We're scanning this sort of, I don't know, key shape. I don't know. We scan this shape for what we were thinking about, which was the 2, 3, 4, 8. Do we see any 2, 3, 4, 8s? And we do not, right? We're going to do that for all of these cells. And you can get pretty fast at that because you just have to look at the box for all 3 of these and say, okay, nothing from the box. And then you just look at these, right? And I see I have this 2, 8 here. So this is the only cell that might be interesting. So let's get rid of the green here. This cell was reduced to 2, 3, 4, 8 for the row, but it can't be 2 or 8 because of the column. So it leaves just 3, 4. So in the final puzzle, this cell has only the ability to be a 3 or a 4, because if it was anything else, if it was a 1, it would repeat with that 1. If it was a 2, it would repeat with that 2. If it was a 5, it would repeat with both of these 5s. The 6 would clash with that 6. The 7 would clash with that 7. The 8 would clash with that 8. And the 9 would clash with that 9. So the only 2 digits I didn't look at were 3 or 4, which do not have an obvious clash. Now, only one of them will be correct. So we can't just put a 3 or a 4 in there, and we definitely can't put both. But what we can do is use our center mark notation. and put a 3, 4 in the center. And what center mark notation will always mean is that within that cell, this is the exhaustive list of digits that might still be the answer that actually ultimately gets filled into that cell. We don't know whether it's the 3 or the 4, but we know it's only one of those two. And that's going to be very helpful to know for several reasons. But we'll go over those reasons as they come up. You'll learn through experience there, rather than me listing them with no context. But the 3 and the 4, we're center marking that, and that's going to let us know when we come back that we discovered that this cell was highly restricted. And we call these candidates. The 3 and 4 are candidates for the cell. You can imagine if you're thinking about who's going to be president, right? There's only a list of candidates that could become president, and then they're voted on, and one of them ends up president. And so it's just like the 3 and 4 are candidates for what end up in this cell. Only one of them will, but we've reduced the entire population to a smaller list. All right. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but it's an interesting way to think about it, at least. And so now the rest of this row, we're not going to mark. I only mark cells with center marks if they are down to 3 or fewer digits. And that's why we were examining. We went 2, 3, 4, 8. It's always good to just be thinking about that first, get an instinct on what might get restricted and whether any individual digit is especially restricted, before we then go and center mark just the ones that end up to down to fewer than 4, down to 3 or fewer. All right. So that was the last thing for this band. No other row or box is down to 4 or fewer open cells. And that's why we target the 4 or fewer open cells, because they're the most likely. First of all, it's hard to keep a lot of digits in your head when you're trying to scan that. And it's the most likely structure to early on be able to find naked singles or restricted cells. All right. So we have finished with our bands, but we're not done with this initial pass because we're going to do the exact same thing just with stacks. And anytime I said row, just replace that with column. If you think about it, if we were to rotate the puzzle 90 degrees right now, we could just do bands again, right? If I rotate 90 degrees, stacks become bands and columns become rows. But we don't need to rotate it, right? In fact, we can't in this software. So we're just going to do stacks. So we'll start with this 4, 6. We do have another 6 down here. Those look down. Now, immediately, we're going to get some really interesting stuff out of here, right? Because these can't be 6 either. So the only cell in this box can be 6. Now, when I place this 6 here, which I can, notice how it removes a 7 corner mark. So you want to pay attention to what's getting removed when you place that digit. And when we do so, now there's only one place in this box that can be 7. That's what our corner mark is telling us. We don't have to rescan these 7s. We can, but the corner mark has helped us remember what we already knew, what we already discovered, which was 7 was down to these 2, and now it can only be here. So the 7 is also a hidden single in the box. Now, hidden single is a term I haven't used yet today. But what it means is hidden is always going to refer to the fact that we're looking at all the cells in a row, column, or box. In this case, the box. And single in this case means that there is a single cell remaining that can have a particular digit in it. We usually specify that digit. We can specify the box as well. So we can say hidden single 7 in box 7. This is box 7. We count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is box 7. And it's a hidden single 7 in box 7. It just so happens that the digit matches the box. This was a hidden single 6 in box 7, right? So that's kind of like if you think about like chess notation, or if you're familiar with that, it's just a way of notating this was the step that we found. And so we found a hidden single 7 in box 7 here. And so now what we want to do is we want to make sure we do what's called following up. Before we continue scanning this stack, I mean, if you want to, you can just scan the whole stack first, but I recommend following up as soon as you can. But whatever makes the most sense to you. The important thing is to not forget to follow up. So we placed this 6, and remember, we already scanned this band, and we scanned it for buddies for this 6 here, and there wasn't one, but now there is. And so now this 6 has a buddy, so we can follow up on that, and these 6s aren't here, and that places the 6 here in this box. We do not need to follow up on this stack because we haven't scanned the stack yet. So it's nice to be able to do it in an order that you only have to start following up with a vengeance when you're near the end of your scanning session. All right, so that was the 6. Now the 7, we have finished all the 7s, so we don't need to worry about that. But also remember what else we looked for in this band. We looked for filled box rows, which we didn't fill a new box row, so that's okay. Oh, we did fill one. So we filled a new box row, so we need to look here. So what do we care about? We don't care about anything that's already in the box. So 5, 6, 7, 9 already don't care about. So it's just the 1. But the 1 does look in here. These aren't 1. That's not 1. We look up here desperately hoping for 1 more, but we don't find it. And we've put 1 corner marks in here. And those 1 corner marks, they point. You're always going to get pointing in this situation. So they point in here. These ones look in here. This one doesn't help. And we get a 1 in one of these 2 as well. So we get some extra markings that we didn't have. And now any rows or boxes down to 4 or fewer. This box is down to 3, but what I'm going to say is I'm going to hold off on that because I'm going to be looking at it anyway when I finish this stack. So there's no reason to get ahead of myself there. But we do have this row down to 4, so we at least want to focus on these 2 digits, if not all 4 of them. But the entire row needs 1, 2, 4, and 8. So we're looking over here, and we see that this can't be 2 or 8. So if we're down to 1, 2, 4, 8, and this isn't 2, 8, then this is only 1, 4. So we can center mark that. This can't be a 4, so this is down to 1, 2, 8. All right, and that was what we need from that. This row is also down to 4. So what does it need? It needs a 2, 3, 4, 8. Noticing a pattern with 2s and 8s. 2, 3, 4, 8. I'm actually not seeing anything helping 2, 3, 4, 8. So we're just going to leave those alone. I think we already did this row, and I think it was only the 3, 4. And I just forgot. That's another thing with these walkthroughs where I spend a lot of time explaining things. Is the longer that clock goes up, right, the less my short-term memory is helping me. If I'm solving, I'm going a lot faster, and I can utilize short-term memory a lot better. But once my solves start taking 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because of the explanations especially, where I'm taking long pauses, I start forgetting stuff that I already knew. And that's where the notation really comes in handy, but also just the faster you get, because you're able to use that short-term memory more effectively. So it's really an unfortunate situation there, but there's kind of an exponential improvement in time, especially at first. And then you start hitting this sort of asymptote where, that's just sort of the limit in how quickly you're able to get through all the scanning. But anyway, we're going to return back to this stack. We're not going to worry about this yet because we're not there on the stack yet. All we did was scan this 4, 6, and that cascaded to all of this stuff. So that's another thing with short-term memories, remembering what you were doing and what you meant to follow up on. If you need to, you can start coloring, right? That Sudoku Pad allows you to color. So you can just start using random colors to mean things to you to try to remind yourself, hey, I colored this. What did that? Well, it's like putting a string on your finger, right? You're putting a string or putting a color on this 4, 6 to go, oh yeah, that's where I left off. I scanned the 4, 6. We also have this 7, 6. We placed this 7 down here from this 6, which is interesting, but we can scan that now. We have these 7s looking in. I'm going to try to speed up a little bit at this point because we are already 22 minutes into this solve. And so there's 7s up here. Additionally, that's it. That's all the buddies we find here. And now we're looking for filled box columns, and we see that this 4 is quite helpful. So the 4 ends up in one of these 2, and that's going to point up with this 4, and this 4 looks in and puts a 4 in one of these 2. Okay. And now we look for columns or boxes down to 4 or fewer. That's where this comes in. And because it's down to 3, I'm just going to center mark it and clean it up because we know we want all of them center marked. So I want the 2, 4, and 8, and this can't be 4 because of that 4, and we already knew the 4 would end up in one of these 2. So even if we didn't have that turn red, we'd still want to clean it up by looking at the corner marks we have in the box and making sure we're respecting that by eliminating it from everywhere else in the box. Okay. So what did we learn from this? Anything else to learn from this stack is basically the question. No, I don't think so. So now we move on to the next stack. So we have this 4, 7 here. 7s are taken care of already. The 4 doesn't have a buddy. And now you have a choice between these 2. I'm going to take the 1, 2, 7, 8. Looking for 1, 2, 7, 8 here. We know the 7s are done already in this stack. 1, 2, 8's not doing anything. It is actually doing something, but it's not something we're scanning for right now. But for those of you who want to jump ahead, we do have this 1, 2, 8 ending up here, but we'll find that later if we need to. Sometimes we don't. But I'll go over that at the end of the puzzle afterwards if we didn't end up needing it for this part. All right. So that was this stack. I don't think there's anything else to do in this stack. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on to this stack now. So we have this 1. 1 does not repeat. We're looking at 2, 5, 8. We see the 5 has a repeat. So we can mark 5s up here. And I really think that's all we get out of the stack. No filled box columns, no columns or boxes down to 4 or fewer. All right. So that was our initial pass on scanning. Like I said, sometimes you get a lot of it. Sometimes you finish the puzzle. Sometimes you don't get that much, and that's okay. Depends on what the puzzle is going to require. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through things one box at a time. Remember when I said at the very start, maybe you do, maybe you don't, it was a while ago, that we were hyper-focused on bands and stacks. We were mostly looking at what can an individual band or stack tell me, with a little bit of poking out just to help us corner mark. But we were very much focused on scanning that way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hyper-focus on one box at a time, but we're going to pay attention to what the 4 boxes that affect it are doing. Like the direct effect boxes. What are they? So we're looking at all of them, but we don't want to just like this is a lot to look at, right? So my recommendation is to focus on the givens in this box, in this case, just the 4, 6. And basically what are my open rows and columns, right? In this case, or according to this 4, 6, what are the rows and columns it doesn't occupy? So in this case, this is the row that they don't occupy. And so I'm going to think about the 1 and the 8. And I'm going to look down here in the 2 columns they don't occupy, and I'm going to look for another 1, 8. And I don't see any. So that's not helpful, unfortunately. But now that's it for this box. So we're going to move on to the next box. And I've got this one. So I got a lot of pairs of givens. I recommend starting with the ones that are sharing a row or column. So in this case, because these share a row, there's going to be 1 column they don't occupy. We've got the 4, 5, and 6, and we're looking for 4s, 5s, and 6s out here. And we actually see a 4 and a 6. So let's take them one at a time. So what do these 4s do? Well, this 4 looks into the box like this. This 4 looks in the box like this. Notice they are removing 4 from 5 out of the 9 cells, and they're missing. Like if you think of them as shooting, I don't know. They don't see this 1, 8. And so the 1, 8 is also helping by removing 2 more cells. And that we did that on purpose. We only looked at rows and columns that would do that. And I call that a crossing because the 4s cross in this box and they miss the 2 givens we were focused on. And so that means 4 in this box is actually only in these 2 cells. And those 2 cells happen to be in the same row, and they always will be when we find it this way. And so that causes pointing. And so you get a lot out of that. So we have these pointing 4s with this 4 looking in, putting the 4 up here. And these corner marks are trying to remind us that these 2 cells actually cannot be 4. We can look at the box to see that. We can look at the row to see that. All right, we also had the 6. This 6 looks up. This 6 looks in. And actually, it would have been corner marked here, but the 2 happens to tell us that this is a hidden single 6 in box 2. So we can place that 6. Remember that 6 does have a buddy now. This 6 looks up, and so the 6 ends up in one of these 2 cells. So we know 4, 5s, and 6s end up in this sort of L-shaped set of cells somewhere. Okay, so now we can rescan this band, at least in reference to this placed 6. So first of all, we did finish a box row, so we want to look here, but unfortunately there's nothing here to help. The 1's already in the box, 6 is already in the box. We also want to see if we've reduced a row or a box to 4 or fewer, and we did. We reduced this box to 4, so it's helpful just to think about it now. And when we think about it, we think about the 4, 5, sorry, I missed something, 3, 4, 5, and 9. And something I'm going to notice immediately, which hopefully you notice as well, is that this 5 is removing 5 from 2 of the cells. And so that means we can corner mark 5s here. Now, that does allow us to point and remove this 5. This corner mark 5 is no longer there. So 5 is reduced to 2 places. But it should also trigger something, which is something we haven't gone over yet, which is that we have found a hidden pair. Now, remember the word hidden meant we were looking at a row, column, or box. In this case, because we're looking at our corner marks, that should hint to you that we are hidden in the box. So we have a hidden pair in box 2. But what is the pair? Well, it's a 4, 5 pair. So what that means is I have reduced the list of cells in this box that both 4 and 5 can be in to 2 cells. Pair implies 2. Think about like poker or whatever, or just a pair, like a couple, right? Pair means 2. Always means 2 in Sudoku. And so the 4 and the 5, this 4 and 5, are saying 4 and 5 can't be in these cells. And these are saying 4 and 5 can't be in these cells. And that's what our corner marks are telling us as well. 4 and 5 must be in these 2 cells. Well, we need 2 cells for 4 and 5. So in our solution, one of these will be 4 and one of these will be 5, which means we can center mark that. We know this cell will only ever be 4, 5, and this cell will only ever be 4, 5. We can remove the corner marks because this pencil marked 4, 5 pair is more powerful. It has told us not just that the rest of the row can't be 4 or 5, which the pointing already told us about, but it has also told us that these cells can't be 4 or 5, which we already knew from this, but it has informed us that without having to scan outside the box. And so these 2 cells are down to 2 digits as well, and they are the 3 and the 9. So we're scanning for 3s and 9s over here, but we don't have them, so we center mark that. Now this 3, 9, this is called a naked pair. So whenever you find a hidden technique, there's an equivalent naked technique. So in this case, we had 4 cells left, and we found a hidden pair, which takes out 2 of those cells. So there's 2 cells left, and we end up with a naked pair in the remaining 2 cells, because it's going to be 4 minus however many cells we're taking out of the hidden. Or if you find a naked, that's 4 minus how many are in the naked is how many are in the hidden. So we have this naked 3, 9 pair. And naked, when we use that word, we mean we're referencing our center marks. We're referencing the candidate list on those individual cells. And this cell could only be 3, 9, and this cell could only be 3, 9. And they share a column. And because they share a column, also because they share a box, but let's focus on the column. Because they share a column, we can't have them both be 3 or both be 9. Therefore, one of them will be 3 and one will be 9. We don't know what order it'll be in, but the question to ask is, does this column care? And the answer is no. The column does not care which, these cells down here do not care which one ends up 3, which ends up 9. Either way, it has 3 and 9 eliminated, which means that this column has only 3 digits remaining. And so we can fill those out, and we know it's the 1, 2, 8. Now, that is an alternate way for us to have found what I was going to talk about earlier. So let's talk about it now, which is we had this 1, 2, 8 given in this box. And they avoid this column. They also avoid this row, but let's just talk about this column. You can also look for it in the row and find nothing. But in this column, what this 1, 2, 8 is doing is it's saying, well, these can't be 1, 2, 8. Right? This 1, 2, 8 says they can't be here because we can't repeat in the box, leaving 6 cells for 1, 2, 8. But we have 3 givens down here that aren't 1, 2, 8. They are the 4, 5, 6 that use up 3 of those locations. And so actually this is called a hidden triple for the column. So there's a 1, 2, 8 hidden triple in column 4 is the way I would say that, which means that there are only 3 cells in column 4 that can take a 1, 2, or 8. None of the other cells can be any of 1, 2, 8. If any of them could be any one of them, like say 1 could be here, or 1 could be here, or 1 could be here, oh, down here or something, then it's no good. But all of 1, 2, 8 are restricted just to the same exact 3 cells in the column. And so we need 3 cells for 1, 2, and 8. So those are the 3 cells they go in. And remember, because it was a hidden triple, that used up 3 out of the 5 cells, it leaves a naked pair. And so we found the naked pair instead of the hidden triple. You're always going to, it's always segments. The row column box, it always gets segmented by the hidden and the triple techniques. It gets segmented up by them. And so if there were 3 used by the hidden triple, there's 2 used by the naked pair. And you can find one or the other. Instead of finding a hidden single, you can find a naked octuple if you want to. And so that's why we only ever look for quadruples, because a quintuple can be seen as the opposite quadruple at worst. But in general, in New York Times puzzles, you really just need triples, because they don't really depend on quadruples to solve. But anyway, hopefully that was informative. This is going to be one of the longer solves, just because I am really taking my time and there's a lot of things to explain. But I think we've covered almost everything except claiming. Maybe we'll explain claiming as well. But anyway, we got this 3, 9 and this 4, 5. The 4, 5 removes 4, 5 from the rest of the row, but we already knew that from the pointing. Let's see, is there anything else to do to follow up here? I really don't think so. So that was what we did by focusing on this box. We ended up finding this 6, and it was because of the 6s crossing in, right? We also found the 4 and the 5 then being here. So let's move on to this box. This box has only 1 given in it, so I would say, hey, let's skip it. This box has 2 givens, and so I just care about this 8 here looking in. We're looking for an 8 down here. We don't see one. So you can do this very quickly, right? But you want to make sure you do it carefully. So here, this 4, 7, we're looking for this 2, 8. And we do have a 2 and an 8. So let's go over one at a time. We have this 2 looking in, this 2 looking in. No other 2s helping. We'd look for a 2 down here to help. But there is a 2 in one of these 2. And that does point left along with this 2. No 2s down here to help, or up here. So we end up with a 2 in one of these 2. The 8s do something very similar. We cause 8s to point into this box along with this 8. And the 8 ends up in one of these 2. And guess what? We found another hidden pair. So we can convert those corner marks to center marks and put the 2, 8 hidden pair in. Now, whenever we center mark something, I have been doing this, but whenever you center mark something, you want to be looking to see if you have any buddies to create naked pairs. or triples. And in this case, we have found a naked 2-8 pair. This is not something you want to have to go back and find later. You sometimes you do, like it's not always possible to be perfect, but if you can notice it as soon as you place the center marks, that's way better. So we have this 2-8 pair here. And so that means the rest of the column cannot be 2-8. We have this naked 2-8 pair. And so these have only 3 digits left to place for the column. So let's just fill them out. They are the 3, the 5, and what did I miss? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's the 9. 3, 5, and 9. And this can't be 5 because of that 5. We are going to try to reference our corner marks as well whenever we center mark, just to double check. Nothing else there. So we just have this 3, 5, 9. Things I'm noticing when I place this 3, 5, 9, we have something very similar here. That could be the start of a naked triple, but we don't have the third one. So when we place the, if or when we place the third one, that's when we would look and see that we have a naked triple. Here also, potential naked triple with any of these cells. We see these are corner marked with 4s, so these would never do it because they have a 4 as an option. But maybe this one would be 3, 5, 9. We don't know. We haven't center marked it yet. But we don't just randomly center mark cells. We center mark things based on what we've discovered. Okay, so until we're desperate, any of my rules can always be have an addendum to them until we're desperate. So anyway, we got that 3, 5, 9 from this 2, 8. The 2, 8 also affects the rest of the row, right? None of these can be 2, 8. We already kind of knew that, but that is down to 4 digits. So let's think about what they are. They're down to 1, 3, 5, and 9. 1, 3, 5, 9. Now I'm seeing this 5 here. Takes 5 out of 3 out of the 4. So we have a hidden single 5 in row 6. Right here. Place the 5. Now that 5, the immediate follow-up is this can no longer be 5. And this is where center marks can give you naked singles. This cell is down to a single candidate, 4. So 4 has won the presidential race. It is down to just 4. And that places the 5 here. And that places the 1 here. So we can clean up some of these 1s here. When I removed that 1, I remembered this was part of a 1, 2, 8 triple. I wanted to check where 1 could still be in the triple. And it ends up being only in one of these 2 cells. So we can corner mark that. I guess I missed that at some point when we played. Oh, we just placed this one. So the other follow-up to do is to find buddies, right? So we have the buddy for this one. Find a buddy for the 4 as well. Those 4s look down, putting a 4 here. And find a buddies for the 5. We already have all 3 of them. Also, we placed this 4, 5 in this band, but we already had that as a pair. So I already know that we already dealt with dealing with the row and dealing with the band in general. And so it doesn't help the band out. But what it does do is it reduces this column to 3 open cells. So let's take a look. The 3 remaining digits are 3, 6, and 9. And this cannot be the 6 or the 9. So this is a naked single 3. We can place it. That means these can't be 3, leaving behind a 6, 9 pair. Now that 6, 9 pair does affect the rest of the box, leaving just 1, 2, 3, and 8. We know the 3 is reduced to these 2. And actually, this 3, 9 pair did cause a buddy with this 3 at some point. We could have marked those 3s at that time. And now we've actually, this is another case where basically we found a hidden quad because of our 4 overlapping corner marks, but really our corner marks are exhaustive. There's only 4 digits left, 1, 2, 3, 8, and they're exhaustive. So we can just center mark them instead of corner marking them. It's generally more helpful and cleaner to look at, as you can see. Now there may be some pointing here that was still useful. So let's think about it. Knowing that these 1s point, no longer helpful. Because they don't help the column, they don't help the box. Knowing that these 2s point could still, it's not really helpful. We have this 2, 8 pair here and we have this 2 here. So we want to only keep the ones that are actually going to be helpful. The 8s aren't helpful. The 3s also not helpful. So we don't need any of them. So you might want to think about which ones you might want to leave around. We also have this row that's been reduced to 3. So, at some point, the puzzle is going to just always have a row, column, or box that's down to 4 or fewer, and you're just going to finish the puzzle that way, and that's perfectly fine. So we're down to 1. We have the 2. We have the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is the 9. And this can't be 1 or 9, so we can place the 3. Notice how this is just pointing out naked singles to us left and right. The 3, is there any follow-up on it? Not that I can tell immediately. It did reduce this column to 4. So I guess we could think about that now. We need the 2, 4, 7, 8. 2, 4, 7, 8. So this is 2, 4, 7. This can't be 2, 4, or 7. So this is the 8, naked single 8. See how this is happening? We end up with the 8 over here. Always do the buddies immediately if you can. And these are down to 2, 4, 7. This can't be 7. Okay, we'll just clean that up. This can't be 2 because of the box. Okay, this row is down to 4. So basically, if I'm seeing row, as soon as I see a row, column, or box down to 4 or fewer, I'm just thinking about it at this point. I'm noticing this box is down to 3, so let's prioritize that. This is 2, 4, 8. I don't think there's anything else to do with that. I do notice this matches up. Ooh, so I missed this 2, 8 pair somehow. And so that does make this a 4. So, yeah, like I said, no one's perfect. This is down to 2, 3, 4, 8. And I think it can be any of them. Down here, we need 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, we have all the odd digits. Oh, no, we're missing 1. Sorry, we need 1, 2, 4, 8. I don't know how that happened. This can't be 2, 8 still. So this is down to 1, 4 only. Okay. All right, now we take a step back. We think about what didn't I follow up on? What have I gotten recently? That might be helpful. And if we can't see anything for that, we can go back to our box scanning, or we can see if we have any rows, columns, boxes down to 4 or fewer that we haven't looked at yet. Like this, placing this 8 did reduce us to 4 in this row. So let's look at that before we continue our box scanning, right? We need the 1, 3, 5, and 9. Over here is definitely worth marking. We got the 5 here, the 3, 9 here. So 1, 3, 5, 9. And just like I said, those clean up. We are looking for buddies every time we'd center mark something. Over here, none of these can be 1, so we know they're down to the 3, 5, 9, and it cleans up from there. This 5 cleans up. The 3, 9 looking for buddies. 3, 5, 9 looking for buddies, right? Okay, any other rows, columns, boxes down to 4 or fewer. This box is down to 3 because we have this 1, 9 pair. So we need the 3, 4, 7. Oh, yes, and we have... Where's that 3 coming from? Why am I... Oh, there's a 3 in the box, so I misscanned the box. So, yeah, the red mark saved me there. It wasn't 3, 4, 7. It was 4, 7, 9. There we go. That's much better. This 7's not there. Okay, so we're looking for a buddy for the 4, 9, for the 4, 7. We see that this column was down to 2, 4, 7, but doesn't seem to do anything. The 9 is restricted to these 2, which we can corner mark. No, it's not the 9. Sorry, let's back up. I'm missing a digit every time I scan this box. It's the 6. I'm sure of it this time. 4, 6, 7. Now the 6 is reduced to these 2. That makes a lot more sense. So I was like, where's the 9 in this row? And I realized it was here, and I was like, how could these be 9? Okay, sorry, I'm making some silly mistakes towards the end of this puzzle. I think it's because it's been too long. But anyway, these 6s do point, and they remove the ability of this cell from being 6. And now you can see there's only 1 corner mark 6 left. When we do that, that removes a 4 and a 5 corner mark. That means there's only 1 5 corner mark left. There are 2 4 corner marks left. Now this 5 does make that a 1. And so we've got a few things we want to follow up on here. So the 1 does help this box. If you notice, the 1 looks down into this box along with this 1. Placing the 1 here, giving us, it resolves this whole quad, 2, 3, 8, 1. That resolves this, all these 2, 8 pairs. All of these 2, 8 pairs resolve. We are left with a 2, 4 pair in this row. Notice when we clean up center marks, we want to be looking for pairs. So that causes the 3 there. This is an 8 for the row. I was just scanning the row to see what was left. This 8 also removes that 8, causing this to be 8 and 7. That can't be 7 anymore. We now have this 2, 4 pair, placing this 7. That can't be 7 anymore. So this is a 4, 6 pair. We'll come back to that. That's not 3. Okay, so this 4, 6 pair, I don't think there's... I mean, it means this is down to 1, 2, I guess. It can't be 4 anymore. Okay, I think that the best thing is this is going to be a pair, and that's going to resolve this. I know that for sure, right? Because if this is a pair of 2 digits, there's only 4 digits left in the box, and these use 3 of them. So what is this? This is the 4, 5, and actually the 5 gets placed. So that's the 5, that's the 4, that's the 9, that's the 3. Told you to resolve those. That's a 5. All right, that's 6 and 9, that's 4 and 6. That does leave this only as the only 4, that's 2. That resolves all of this, all of that. Bottom band's done. Middle band is done. Now we're going to finish off this band, right? It's inevitable. Once you have 2 bands done, the top band just finishes. So we just got to think about what these are. Let's start with these. These are a pair. We need a 2, and I'm thinking about them first. 2 and 2 and 3. Unfortunately, they are not resolved. And so now we think about this 2, 3, 9. This can't be 3, 9. So that is the 2, 3, and 9. That's 2 and 3. We're down to 7 and 9. They go like that, and we're done. All right, as I said, this was a very thorough explanation from the basics of how everything worked and what I'm looking at. So I really hope this is helpful to all of the new Sudoku solvers out there trying to learn this technique. Yeah, watch my hard solves as well. Even if you're new, I recommend just watching my hard solve to see what that kind of culminates into and how I utilize these in a more fluid way. Sometimes I'll actually miss things in my hard that I would not miss in my medium, because my medium I'm so exact and systematic. And so there is a trade-off, but of course it doesn't take 45 minutes for me to solve the hard. So adapt this to what works for you, of course, but I do recommend thinking about the things that I think about, at least, and determining for yourself what order you want to do things in, what you feel like you should focus on first, that sort of thing. So yeah, everyone's solve is personal. For this puzzle, there was a lot of really cool stuff going on. We utilized almost everything except for claiming in this one, which was cool. We had naked pairs, we had hidden pairs, we had naked. We had even this hidden triple that we could have used, which we didn't. We had a lot of pointing going on. We found crossings. The initial scan wasn't enough to solve the puzzle, so it was a little bit more difficult. But yeah, cool. Hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, then why not leave a like, subscribe, and a kind comment below.